5 out of 10. Yeah. 6 out of 10. Yes. Okay.
All right, good. We need to have them start typing.
Oh.
Does that work?
I'll make sure they are.
We are.
You are, okay, they are.
We'll call this meeting to order. It's 7:06. And I'd like to invite public comment. Anybody?
Should I call the roll?
Should you do a roll call?
Okay. Bert Cruz. Ping Zhao. Robert Chinovsky. I'm here. Tiffany.
Here?
David Rose.
Here.
Dave Rose. John Fritz. Cindy. Tom,
Here.
yeah. Tom Vasquez.
Here.
And Liz Air. Okay.
So we'll go ahead and invite public comment this time. There's no public comment. Public comment is closed, and we'll move on to the agenda.
Speak up a little bit, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll try. I'm a little nervous. It's a new role for me. So are there any changes, additions, or deletions to the agenda items as seen?
Just want to strike off that we're just going to look at the meeting minutes from the last meeting. I don't have any others to add to that, so
Okay.
we'll move those.
Can I entertain a motion for the agenda?
I move that we approve the minutes, the agenda as presented, as corrected.
All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstained? Okay, so we'll move on to approving the minutes of April 25th. Any corrections, changes?
I move to approve. Second.
All in favor of approving April 25th meeting minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstained? Okay. We'll move on to guidelines for communication. This is something that came out of our executive committee meeting last week. We went ahead and had an executive committee meeting to set the agenda. Janine was out of town. And in that gathering, we looked at some ways for communication for the board members, and just to have a general set of guidelines that we could all live with. And this isn't necessarily something that we need to vote on. It's more of something that we can just agree to follow and live with as a practice. And open to discussing it and some feedback on it.
Madam Chair, do we have the minutes from the executive committee meeting?
I haven't written them up yet.
Okay.
But
we recognize that those need to be
Yes.
done and approved here.
But
Okay,
the
that's
bulk
fine.
of the meeting was in setting the agenda, so they translated out to the agenda that we have.
Okay, there still needs to be recorded minutes.
Yes,
Minutes.
I will
Okay.
get to them.
Okay, that's fine.
Any other comments on these guidelines?
Just referring what you had just said, do we need to post minutes for every committee, the 8 or 10 committees I see down here that we're regularly meeting? So we're looking at from the executive committee down to the tech committee, to every single committee that meets, we do need to be able to have those minutes.
Absolutely.
committee has someone to record those notes, and then I'll help get them. I'm not on every committee, obviously. I'll do the ones that I'm on, but I'll help to post them or whatever, but, so.
We should even help you type those up too.
Can we set a timeline for whenever a committee meets, when those minutes should be submitted to you, rather than having a kind of an agreed timeline?
Mhm.
What's reasonable?
I would think within 48 hours. Because that way it's out of everyone's life and now into your life. Typically, if they're not transcribed in some way, shape, or form in a couple of days, it gets lost in translation. I would certainly think 72 hours would be reasonable, but 48 to 72 hours. Because I don't know how often these committees are going to be meeting.
Right.
But there's a few of them, and we need to get those to you in a timely manner.
Whatever the board wishes in that regard.
Can we all agree to live with those time frames for the minutes, depending on the committees that we're on?
Well, I think we can only agree to what's on the agenda and that we can table, I see further on in the agenda that there's mention of a board retreat. And I think a
Right.
retreat is a really good time to really dissect
Mhm.
things like this. And so maybe we could table what's been brought up with the
Okay.
other committees then and have agreement, and when we have more of a full board
Full
present.
board, yeah.
But I think for what is on the agenda, I'm fine with this.
So then we'll move the time frame of submitting minutes to the bin future
Okay.
exploration. So, in terms of the guidelines for communication, does that seem pretty straightforward to everyone? Is there any other comments on it? We'll move on. The bin is basically the parking lot in a different language. It's a way for us to, if there are things that come up in a meeting, we can move them to the bin to explore them later if they're not really part of the agenda, so we can keep on track with the agenda and stay focused. We just changed the language to be something more used conventionally. I think some discussion of that from the meeting, that the wording was a little off. In terms of parking lot, it sounds like it's being sent way out there, so, does that make sense to everyone? Everyone good with that? Just as a side note, I've attached some time frames to these, just in hopes of helping us to shorten our meeting times, just as a goal. They're not strict, they're not going to be enforced. They're just suggestions for keeping us hopefully within under 2 hours and hopefully within an hour and a half is my goal.
If we move something to the bin, is it going to be reflected on the next agenda as the bin, or how are we going to designate?
I believe that's one place to put it, but also when we set the agenda at the next executive committee meeting, we can look to the bin to take them out and put them on the agenda.
As agenda items as well. Okay, director's comments and announcements. I'll go ahead and start. I wanted to acknowledge, I received, and maybe several others have as well, a press release from Diane Riley Torres. She went through, I believe, a lumpectomy, and I want to wish her a very speedy recovery on that. And our thoughts are really with her. Anyone else who's unaware of that or hadn't received that, I could forward you the press release if you didn't receive it. Are there any other comments?
draft agendas that get set out. My bad on that one. And also, I'm starting a process to go back through the files and close some of the gaps in terms of the meeting minutes and understand how the file system here is. So it's going to take me some time to get the hang of it and get on top of it, but I'm working on it.
Any others?
Yes. I'm trying to sort out all the emails that I got here. It used to be the past practice that folks would get notification of meetings by email. And I think what's happened now is it kind of looks like it's going to that board that you set up, which, by the way, I didn't get Janine's email. Somebody forwarded it to me. So I don't know if it's because I have AOL, which I'm getting rid of. But meeting notification used to come by way of email. Is there still a distribution list where folks who have
The board list is the
requested-
same list, the same kind of defunct list that's been up there. I've sent out the meeting agendas to that list because it copies everybody that's on the board in a simple way
Okay.
versus sending it out to each individual. That was the goal, I think, of what the original board
Okay.
was to make it easy for it to get out to everybody.
I get it now. I'm only getting stuff that is sent to me copied to that board list. That's all I'm getting. I'm not
Okay.
getting anything else. And so maybe some others, I don't know if it's a server problem, AOL probably, or,
Eventually, I mean, literally within hopefully the next week or so, it's gonna be defunct and not used at all. We're just
Oh,
gonna go to
okay.
the new website and do it that way, so there
And-
won't even be.
and then
a
use
board.
distribution lists?
We could use like one email, that gets forwarded to everybody, would be a solution. I have to see what the functionality is of the new forum in terms of alerting members, to new content that's on a forum, that kind of thing.
Right.
So-
And I'm speaking more about non-members of the board who ask, like Diane always has wanted copies of notices, as have others, so I would hope that all of us would get notice. I had no idea about the XCOM meeting.
What we may be able to do is set up like a newsletter function that allows people to subscribe to getting any of the new agendas and things that are posted to that forum, something like that. We can look
Okay.
into having some
And-
kind of function like that.
Okay, so should I be advising people who contact me to send in another request? Because we'll have to start all over from scratch with forming?
Yeah, we're gonna have to start
Okay.
over. I don't know if it's appropriate to send out a blanket subscription to our members or not, if that's an appropriate way to go about that, and then let them unsubscribe, or just to let people come to the new website and subscribe. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure which way is the appropriate
Okay.
way to go about
Okay,
We have some learning to do.
right.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I noticed is that, I don't know that we wanna take action on any of these items here, but that when the agenda is posted, it has to define whether there's gonna be discussion or possible action on any items, so that's the intent there, is to allow members to
Oh, that's a
come
good
and
point.
address. If they see that there's gonna be a discussion or possible action on something,
Mhm.
then that's their cue, so to speak, for them to come and, make their public comment. So, while I see there's nothing on this agenda that has, discussion or possible action, I think it's a short night.
It was a matter of semantics here. On new business, item 1 used the word proposal. That meant action to me. And then item 2 is the same. Item 3 is discussion and
Right.
proposal. So that there was implied, if there's a better way to state that, let me know, and I'll do that.
Well, and that was the other thing, is that, had I, heard for a calling for agenda items, I was going to ask that we adopt, Robert's rules as has been used, the past 10 years with all the boards at PCA, and every committee and commission, and city council in Petaluma uses Robert's rules, as every board that I sit on uses Robert's rules. It's just kind of like the set of rules that boards use, and that would have been something that I would have asked for on the agenda. However, we'll have to table that.
Are we not using Robert's rules at the moment, or
Robert's rules defines how you put something on an agenda.
on the agenda as well?
Discussion and possible
as the
action
meeting
is
itself?
the
Okay.
terminology,
Okay.
Thank you.
and we'll work through that.
I think I think some of the points that you're making are very valid, because it may not be for old business versus new business or whatever, and I think it's really important that whether it be an action item, a discussion item, or an informational item, be designated. And I think that's another topic for perhaps our retreat, and how to, first of all, we need to get copies of Robert's rules. That would be helpful. And two, talking about setting the agenda. But I think that is an item that would be very beneficial to talk about at the retreat.
And I have some real good aids that we can use, and Google has all kinds of sites that give you direction on that.
On Robert's rules. Any other directors, comments, announcements? And we'll move on to the reports. Treasurer's report.
Being is not here, I'm not going to speak on his behalf. Very little to say really. Financial statements for April 30th are located at the back of the report. I feel they are self-explanatory. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to discuss it. But it's pretty self-evident. So, yes?
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm just trying to understand the logic of this, and I see an inconsistency.
Which report are you looking at?
The income statement with budgets and variances.
May I ask you for your name, please?
My name is John Bertucci. I'm just trying to read this, and I see in the variance list, we have positive numbers and negative numbers. But they're not always related to whether the actual budget is more or less. For example, workshop fees was budgeted at $840 were raised. That's a negative number. But if you look down at employee benefits and operating expenses, it looks like you've budgeted more than you've spent, but it's still a negative number. And I haven't gone through all the way through, but there are quite a few of those. Turn the page. Payroll for office manager was budgeted at $1,900 and $1,200 was spent. So my understanding would be that the $738 should be a positive number. Am I correct, or am I misreading?
Yeah, when I was reading this, it took me a while to figure out what that negative meant, because I've always thought negative meant that we're in the negative, that we had actually overspent. And but it is consistent, as far as I can tell, in terms of utilizing the negative sign, which represents we still have money we can spend. It's kind of.
But if that were so, then there wouldn't be any, then it would be reversed all the way through. And I found other areas where it looks like you've budgeted more than you've spent, and it's still a negative number, or vice versa.
In other words, the budget was higher than the actual expenditure. And that.
Well, look at payroll services was budgeted at $29 and $39 was spent. Turns out to be a positive number. Second page, payroll services.
But it is consistent with the negative number, in that the negative is what we haven't spent, and the positive is overspent.
Well, forgive me.
Just simply means under budget or over budget.
Yeah.
can I say something?
Yes,
I
please.
think it is consistent, and when you see the minus, that means it's under budget.
That,
For example, on that office manager, at 1212, that was the actual, the budgeted was 1950, so there, it was $738 under budget. That's why, that's how you can explain the minus.
okay.
And then on your payroll service, the budget was 29, and actually it was overspent by $11.
Well, what about radio transmitter site lease?
We're under budget.
Okay. Okay,
Is this the way, such a question, is this the way it's always been reported? Because it seems, I mean, I don't even balance my checkbook, I don't even enter my checks on the last one that you're talking about, but it seems it should go the other way to me. That it,
that's what I was thinking.
but I don't know how it's been done in the past.
You know, I've seen budgets like this before, and this is pretty standard. So now it just comes out as a report format
Okay.
on these things.
Anything else?
Okay. Then we will have the executive director.
Can I just bring up one more, the postage, and I'm looking at postage. It was under budgeted and it's, no, I'm still fighting for my negatives when I
Yeah,
get.
just think opposite of what seems logical to you.
Ah,
There you go. A counterintuitive budget reporting system.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like to move to approve the treasurer's report as submitted.
Oh, thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Treasurer report is approved. Thank you, Tim.
Well, I included my executive director's report in the board packet in case any of you want to refer back to it. I will just read it. My usual practice at board meetings is to report on accomplishment and challenges that have occurred over the previous month. However, this board and this organization is now at a turning point. So I'd like to use my report this month to address some larger issues. When I took this job a year and a half ago, I made 3 commitments. 1, to help PCA become a viable and dynamic resource for the Petaluma community. 2, to embrace a model of leadership through service, always basing my decisions on the questions, what is best for the organization, and does this help the organization better serve the Petaluma community? And 3, to not participate in fighting or unconstructive behavior. I love PCA and I believe in its mission to my core. Throughout my career, I have always worked to empower independent media and give people voice. And I want to be able to continue to serve this organization in this regard. I now see an opportunity to move forward in a powerful way with you, the governing board of the organization. In order for us to do this effectively, I have 4 recommendations. 1, that the board launch a comprehensive board development process. In so doing, the board and the executive director can move forward together in our development of this organization. There are resources available for this through the Volunteer Center of Sonoma County, the Healthy Community Consortium, and other organizations that this board can plug into immediately. 2, that the board and I work together to establish its expectations of the executive director for communication and decision-making. 3, that together we establish a clear and doable scope of work for the executive director within the budgetary and time constraints. 4, that together we establish and work within a set of practices for respectful communication and cooperation. These last 6 months have been very challenging for me as the executive director and for the organization overall. We have experienced turnover in 5 board positions and 3 staff positions, putting great strain on the organization's stability. You, the new board, represent an opportunity for positive change. I invite you all to share in my commitment to doing the work necessary to bring renewed stability to the organization and put it on a solid path of community service and growth. Thank you.
Any comments?
Well, I think it's really important that, I agree with you, that this is a turning point. I'm very new to this organization, but I've been doing some reading about past minutes and as much as I can glean from the website and such like that. I think it's okay for a board to agree to disagree, as long as it's done respectfully and within the rules, Robert's rules, and such like that. And I think it's fine for us to, I think it's great that we develop a working relationship with you. We have to, as a board, I think, being a new board, find our own identity as well and see what our thoughts are, what our own individual visions are, which I'm hoping this retreat will surface. So I'm looking forward to being able to accomplish all of this because personally, again, I only speak for myself, I would not want to serve on a board that I didn't think was serving the community, serving the membership, and going forward, and not just spinning its wheels. So we look to you for guidance as well to come in. It has to be feedback both ways, and honest feedback. And that's all I've got to say about that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Nope. Then we'll move on to the executive committee. So the executive committee met, and unfortunately Janine was not here for the first meeting of setting the agenda, but what we had looked at was a way to work with the executive director to set the agenda the week prior to the upcoming meeting, and that allowing for the process of bringing in the board's input in the directions that we want to go with strategic planning, and things that eventually would come out of our board retreat, our goals and input that we'd like to have. So that's the focus of last week's meeting, was to create this agenda and hopefully to do so in the future. And that's on the new business that we have later on the agenda. Let's discuss that. That's all I have to report.
I'd like to just comment with that, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just wanted to comment that I had sent an email to Tiff asking about input from the rest of the board for the agenda, and it was stated by Tiff in her response that this time the executive committee was taking on the agenda, but in future agendas there would be input from the rest of the board.
Well, and we had posted the agenda. I have to say, I apologize. I thought that in posting the agenda that was the only item on there that kind of cued the board to, either come to the meeting or submit agenda items. So just for the future, just so every board member knows, you're welcome to submit items for the agenda at any time for future agendas, either for the next meeting or, months down the line as well. So, my apologies. I'm not being clear.
How often will the executive committee meet?
At least the week prior to the meeting, the regular monthly meeting.
So if we have agenda items, we have to get that really to the executive committee before they meet.
Yeah, because we need 72 hours to post the agenda, like prepare it after the meeting and then post it.
If we meet the Tuesday before this Tuesday, there is some, that gives about 3 weeks from the meeting to pull together items and properly agendize it.
I think we are going to meet, no, that's the tech committee
Right.
that's meeting the second time. Okay, sorry.
And we'll get a schedule of meetings out soon, won't we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Finance committee?
I will speak for the finance committee. We had 2 meetings. Our primary goal was to work out a budget for the next fiscal year. we met for the second time last night. We were relieved to discover that the budget was not ready, or it was not required that we have the budget ready last night. It's a much more difficult process than I think I had even imagined. Basically, we're going over it line by line, and there's a lot of discussion. A lot of everybody on the finance committee has their own ideas on how to do things, so it's going to take a little bit more work. But I think the end product is going to be right, and it's going to be beneficial for PCA. The other thing too, we also discussed, and there are two items that we want to get on the agendas upcoming here in the next month or two. One is regarding an in-house bookkeeper, and secondly, we were discussing the money market fund and the possibility of moving it. But it's an item that should be on the agenda and openly discussed here with the board. We were, however, how can I say, wasn't clear to us last night as to how to get stuff on the agenda. So I'm happy for the discussion over the last few minutes. I think now we have a handle on it, if you agree. So we'll be getting these items on the agenda. But as far as the budget, it's a work in progress, and we will have it out on time. I promise. And you do too.
Yeah, well, we'll see if this ad hoc committee still needs to be formed for that purpose.
Yeah, so. Okay.
When does the budget need to be submitted?
June 30th.
To the city.
Fiscal year.
So so actually, it was officially by I guess,
It was,
it was yesterday.
yeah.
That's what we found
Right.
out. And
Which-
it was officially, but we've had an extension because of the situations we're in. The city's going to allow us an extra month extension.
Okay, just to point out, that is the third item and the substantial item for the meeting, to talk about that at the end of this also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the radio committee, we actually need to have an additional board member on that committee. Since we need 3 members, I noticed that after our last meeting, we only have 2, Bert and I, as board members on that committee. And I don't have any information on the contract, where it's at, so I don't have anything to share. Janine, if you have information.
We're still waiting on Sonoma State,
Okay,
the slow years, I think,
okay. So we do need to get another board member if anyone is willing to volunteer tonight, or maybe one of our absent members.
Are you still on the radio committee?
Mhm.
Because here it says Bert and Elizabeth.
Elizabeth? Where, in the
I
minutes?
think Bert wanted to get off. Didn't he say that? Because of, I think it was supposed to be you.
Did she join it?
Yeah, she did join.
She did,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, so my name's not there. I only saw 2, and I thought it was just Bert and I, from the actual meeting time when we spoke about it. So Bert wants to be removed, so we'll still need an additional,
I have a memory that if nobody else
Member.
does, maybe I'm on.
okay.
Nobody else does?
I do.
Okay. So we'll still need to get an additional member to join that committee so that we can meet. Nomination committee?
The nominations committee has not met, however, we've swapped an email, and we'll need to do that soon.
Yeah, I know, we only had 3 weeks from the last meeting, so it's been a short month. Okay, so
Should that retroactively be a change in the minutes to put you on radio committee?
That was what was recorded at the meeting last month,
Okay.
whether that Elizabeth and Bert had volunteered for the radio committee. So I don't see a change.
Okay.
That's what's in the notes.
I was already on it, I guess, so it didn't get written down.
So you're still there then?
I'm still on it.
Okay.
So the tech committee met last Wednesday. the main item on the agenda was just to rally volunteers to put content up for the new Joomla website that I've been building. And so Tim and I have been working on that the last 3 or 4 days pretty heavily. We've got a majority of the content is moved over, and the design is pretty well working, and there's a few other pieces that need to be added, and I think we might go live maybe next week. I'm hoping.
You get a lot of kudos, because there's a lot, you've done all the heavy lifting on it, really. And
Thank you.
I'm definitely following your way.
Well, it all looks really hard, but it's pretty easy. Joomla's great. So I'm excited about that, getting that up and running, and having a functioning website again. We didn't discuss any equipment purchases or anything like that, just because Janine was gone, and the main focus was just kind of looking for help for the website. So we're going to meet again June 1st.
Sounds right.
Okay. And we'll get an agenda for that as well. Anything else? Member Advisory Committee?
Okay, the committee has not met yet because it hasn't been formed. And my charge was to come back with a timeline, which I've been really struggling with. Like you say, it's only been 3 weeks since we met, and I'm trying to juggle a 10-day vacation, which is between June 2nd and June 12th. And what I would like to see is that there be a letter go out noticing members that we're trying to form a committee. Obviously, we need to have some outreach, and I believe that we're gonna have to do that through a letter. I'd also like to see that letter not only invite members to join a committee, but we could probably combine 2 efforts in one letter with noticing folks about the handbook review that we have scheduled for June 15th. Now that's what makes sense to me, but it might not make sense to everyone else, and you might have some other suggestions on how we do that, but we are gonna have to notice the handbook review. Not just with a notice on the door and a notice on the site. We need to let folks know that we're going to.
let the membership know. Okay.
Right, so why not do that through a notice of membership for the handbook review and a membership meeting. Now, should that membership meeting occur a couple of days before the handbook meeting so that folks can kind of have a caucus?
A workshop or something on.
Yeah, kind of like a caucus before coming to a open meeting, you know. It would also shorten our meeting on the 15th. If everybody kind of had ideas on what it was that they were gonna address. But that's just my ideas, so I would be happy to put forth some kind of a draft for that letter that should probably go out around June 5th if we're gonna do the timeline that I've laid out here. A letter should go out around June 5th. I'm going on vacation the 2nd, maybe that week before I go on vacation, if I can draft something, work with getting a mailing set up. That's what I would propose.
We don't need to approve like a mailing, do we? That's just,
Well, we don't have a budget for it.
right,
Long since used up all our family budget.
right. So do we need to approve something if we're spending resources we don't have, or?
Well, since we can't
Do all members have
take
the
action tonight
email?
on anything, this is gonna be kind of difficult unless we call a special meeting. But we're gonna have to let the members know somehow.
Do we have a list of all the members, and do they all have emails? And do we have a list of email listserv of any sort?
They know.
Email is problematic. Not everybody gives us their email, they come flying back, you know, it's been hard to, we've only got 60% email penetration. situation.
You can call me.
So what's the process for communication with our membership?
Well, we were using email and, mailings, you know, it's another project that we're working on.
Is a phone tree too labor intensive to do calls to the members? Would that be another solution? Leave messages?
The staff, you're asking?
Or
No, the member volunteer.
members maybe?
Yeah, if a phone, if, like, even if, some of the other members themselves could form a phone tree, so we'd use that like in soccer and other sports types of things, word goes out and it gets kind of spread, through the channels, and there's designated trees. So if we even have to say one leader and then 3 folks that will take it from there, so one calls 3 and 3 calls the other 3 and 3 spreads it out word out. So if that can be organized, that is very effective. I've used that for
How
several
many
clubs.
members do we have right now?
We have 163 members.
It's 163 times 38, so is that where it stands, 38 cents?
We can do a postcard and we can do
Or do a
bulk.
postcard, bulk, you have to get a permit initially, and that's, that's an outlay right there.
And they send it at a certain point, it can take like 2 weeks to mail.
Yeah.
a
Postcards, I think, would be a good option. So what, so 160 times, well, what is a postcard now? 22 cents?
22 or 27. I
Yeah,
think it went
22,
up.
27, 27, okay. Janine, can we look into postcards?
Sure.
You know, since email is at, okay, what did you say, 60% effective right now, or receptive, whatever the word you used? So,
Yeah.
so email we can't really rely on.
Well, we never got any kind of email. David Waxman was working on that, and he's not with us anymore,
Yeah.
so we're in flux about any kind of email way of reaching the members.
I say we try the email and concurrently try postcards.
Mhm.
That
Do we
might
get-
be a task for the member advisory committee is to form their own phone tree. We could certainly task them with that.
Yeah.
I think it would be a huge error and a wrongdoing to not notice the members about what we're doing.
Absolutely, that's huge.
And I think we need to take it even one step further, because I mean, just ask the membership here tonight, how many of you knew that all these committees even existed and that they were being formed and such? Right, it may not be a great goal to take, but my point is, we need to find a better way to communicate with the membership. We're unveiling a website that you're working very hard on, and the tech committee is, met about it. That's something to be excited about. These committees are meeting, and I'm assuming they're open committees. In other words, members can attend any one of these committees, whether it be
And public.
the tech, I'm sorry.
And the public.
Right, and the public. So I'm not sure, I'm just throwing this out for discussion for right now, because I'm not sure which way to approach it. But one of the big things, large problems I see here is a lack of communication. And when we get that website up and going, it's great to have a great website. But if the public doesn't know about it and the membership doesn't really, know about it as well as they should, then why should we have it? In other words, we need to really, this is an unveiling here. And whether we need to do a mailer or find monies and transfer monies from some other, you work your magic. Again, just brainstorming, without communication, everything we're about to do is meaningless. Because if you don't know about it, if the public doesn't know about it, it's just us knowing about it, that's not going to work. Right? So I'd like to see us, and I'm not sure what the procedure would be, talk a little bit more about how we can better communicate and make sure people are visiting the website, know about the website, maybe I don't know if this thing tracks hits or not. It does. That would give us some information as well. Think about a mailer and a temporary fix, the postcard and doing an email or even a phone tree.
And
But I think
press
that should-
releases and every, you know,
Right.
and all the other standard means.
I think we need to be out there and saying, we're doing some good things here, stay with us, and you'll get rewarded. You know, there'll be some, but we need the communication to do that. We don't have that. We can't have a partial email list, that's problematic. We can't send out postcards every time. Phoning is effective, I agree, but it is time, you know, it takes a lot of time to do that. So as a board and feedback from our membership, I think we need to develop a game plan and saying, this is how we're going to notify. This is how we're going to just do every part of our business that we do. Because I haven't seen that as well established as I think we can do in the future.
A great communication method is what you already have here, television station. Channel 26 or 27, 28, a bulletin board, posting meetings and announcements and whatever.
Yeah,
It's
and
free.
that brings up a good interest, because Mr. Thomas from last meeting was questioning about the filming of these board meetings, for instance, and not having them here. Is that gonna start taking place?
It was, the last one was aired.
Okay.
One time.
Well, we need to make sure that it's every time.
Yeah, had some thoughts on perhaps running that on the government channel along with the city council meetings and whatnot. There's a lot of space on that channel to do that.
I don't think we're allowed to.
Well, that's something we can discuss. My point being, and you bring up a good point, you know, there's different ways we can communicate. Let's look at all of them and decide which way we want to go, and be prepared to evaluate and tweak it if we need to.
Could I pull this back to the issue of the member advisory committee? Since I'm new, you can help me out here. There is no member advisory committee at this point in time.
Right.
Okay, so your need is to notice people for the formation of that, item 1. Item 2 is piggybacking on the meeting on June 15th to review the handbook.
Right, noticing
Okay.
folks
Okay.
about their opportunity to weigh in on the handbook.
Right, that's what we need, we need to focus on that.
Well, I think we need to focus, yes, I agree with that, but I
tonight,
think we need to focus on every single committee that we have and do the same thing.
I think,
That's my point.
yeah, that's why the retreat is a great idea, because it goes a lot further. We're doing a new website, we should be talking branding strategy, we should be talking.
This is just phase 1, yeah.
Yeah.
There's
We got a
three
lot of
phases.
work to do.
Mhm.
Right, okay.
This is phase 1 is just to get it functioning again. So can we move communication with the public and membership strategies to the bin, and maybe workshop that more in the retreat?
Is it possible to have, is there 2 or 3 members you could call on to help you and get a task so that we get a communication system up and running as soon as possible? Do you need some help with that, or should members join you and say, okay, let's try this, you think this is gonna work, and then come back with a recommendation?
Yeah, the whole point is getting to those members to let them know. There's not been any outreach yet about
Or
this.
is there a couple of members that would be willing to take that on?
I see, I've heard a voice out here and a hand going up.
Can I ask a question? How many of the members that are here would be willing to participate in a phone tree?
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4. Are there any members of the board who would be willing to participate in working on a phone tree?
Sure.
5? If there are 5 people working on a phone tree,
About
and you have
50
6,
people
that's
each.
50 people, that's 50 people each. But if you have 10 people, if you've got 100, you basically, when you think about a phone script to let people know that there's a meeting, we can power through 50 phone calls really fast. So I would like to propose, I don't know that you can, it's like an informal conversation about supporting the membership advisory committee chair, not committee yet chair, and just doing an outreach to the members and say, we've got a opportunity to have a handbook review, and we're looking to, handbook review. We'd like to have that meeting happen this time, you're welcome to come. And that'll take 30 seconds to make those phone calls. So it's possible for a very small number of people to power through a bunch of phone calls in 4 nights, and everybody's contacted. So that we can make a buzz. I mean, basically, I really appreciate what you're saying about, there's some cool stuff happening here, let's make a buzz and get people, engaged in PCA, because it's like a cool community resource that we want more people to be participating in. So, is it possible to informally have this phone tree? I don't know, because there's a level of rigidity in the way the structure happens with this board that's a little, I'm not quite familiar with.
This is a committee item.
So can
Right,
they?
I'm on vacation, so if you're willing to take the lead, no you,
Me?
yeah, if you're willing to take the lead on organizing this and tracking it and seeing it through fruition, more power to you.
I'll be happy to do that. So, if you guys will give me your phone numbers, we'll get it happening. And can you write the script
The information.
of what we want to put on?
I'm gonna draft the,
Great, get the
Agenda, yeah.
quick script. And then what I heard you suggest was that we wait on the committee work to move forward with the member advisory committee till after the board retreat. Is that what you were suggesting?
No, actually, no.
Oh, okay, so you.
If I understand it correctly, the membership advisory committee is the membership
Oh,
advisory
got it.
committee, not the board. And what Cindy is the liaison to that.
exactly.
So this is really where you're making the right comments, getting the members to help the
Right.
board and the members themselves. That's
Right, the members
that-
need a tap on the shoulder.
Right.
Hey, this is what's happening.
Cool.
yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Pat.
Communication.
John?
Are you going to this in the bin, or should I weigh in with another idea?
But what is it?
This subject of communication with the,
We've got the communication in the bin.
well, let me just,
Would you like to add to the
I'll just
bin?
say it, because it seems to me when somebody becomes a member, they could have a check-off box on their membership form saying, how do you wanna be contacted?
I like
Because
this.
I would love emails. It's a hard, it's there. So maybe in this phone tree, if you got that information, you could isolate the 20 people that need a phone call
Right.
and use email for the others. Now,
Right.
it's more data to crunch.
If you get a hold of them to be able to ask the question
Yeah.
in the process of phoning.
Otherwise,
them.
you're gonna have to do a 50-person phone tree
Right.
attack every time.
And that would be part of the script of this first phone
Right.
tree.
That's
is-
what I'm
That would be one of the script items up for it's like a survey. How would you like to be communicated in the future? In email, let's just check, do we have the right email for you? And you do that, and then you follow along, and says, would you be willing to participate in a meeting, would be another item. So it'd be like 5 or 6 questions, keep it under 10, preferably like 7 or less if you can, on a phone tree, and do just a quick survey of what you'd like to do and an invitation.
And if you're leaving a message, I don't think it exists yet. I'll have to confirm, but I can create an email address that you could give them to request emails. If they like to do emails, they might not phone you back. They might want to send you an email saying they like emails, so maybe we create a members at pca.tv or something. So members can let us know.
Just as a note, members at PCA.tv is already established.
Okay, that's why I said I should
Yeah.
find out what's available. and what isn't.
Subscribing to that list, you send email to subscribe at PCA.tv, and then you're a member of members at PCA.tv.
Which isn't really working right now, right?
Last
Nobody's
I knew
using
it
it.
was working.
But-
It has been used to send out some notices. It
Okay.
was last year.
Okay.
The only issue at stake, I think, is the existing email mailing list. When it was transferred to there were a great number of addresses that were no longer in use or who were no longer members, and there was no maintenance done to the previous list. And when it was put into the mailman list that it is now, it was just a straight dump of all the addresses that PCA had
So the list is probably gonna
without
be-
any confirmation, except the next time a message was sent to members, which the server handles itself, yeah.
It unsubscribes the bounces.
After 5 bounces, or something that's designated, yeah. It's just like a university mailing list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want a fresh email address to give, or do we want to try using that list?
You know what I would suggest, is let's do this phone outreach and get people coming to these two conversations. And then, it sounds like there's a whole communication outreach strategy you guys wanna develop, and then I would move forward with that, cause it feels like we're at kind of a rudimentary level here. Let's get people invited to these meetings. You get your website up. Then let's move forward with a functional system. Send a communication out that's gonna be more like, here's what our plan is, and, you know, I just kind of think, okay, if I'm a new member, which I am, I would like to get a communication that says, we've just completed our fiscal year, we're launching a new fiscal year, here's what our plan is. We'd like to have you be involved in, you know, the next step for PCA. We want you, here's committees you can join in. How do you want us to communicate with you? So that they kind of get like a sense of you guys moving forward with a fresh energy, and okay, now you're inviting me to participate, and then you've got some infrastructure. You know, I don't mean to say that you haven't already had an infrastructure, but you're kind of like redesigning your infrastructure for communicating. You want to make sure that it's working before you ask us to step into something. And you've got a short timeline that we need to work with to get this communication out around the member thing and the handbook thing. So let's just get that handled while you move forward as a board, working in partnership with your staff, so that members can step into something when you invite them to, that's really clear and that they got a place that they can, you know, really volunteer, that's gonna work. So that feels like, and I'm seeing kind of head nodding, that feels like a good way to move forward informally. Does that sound okay?
Just so that I can frame
Put
this,
that in writing.
frame this kind of with some finality. Cities wrestling with it. You can't have vacations. You're just wrestling with vacations. But
Second.
what is the time frame that you need things done by? When you guys need to get the names of those folks and Tom and all that. But then what are the steps for the record here that we're going to do in the next few weeks to get this to happen?
How long is it gonna take you to get the communication, Cindy?
The communication.
The script that you want us to do on the phone tree?
I don't know that, you want an actual script?
Well, you know,
Or
the
just
the talking
information?
points. You got 2 or 3 talking points?
yeah.
A week?
Yeah,
Great. We can put our phone tree together within the week, so we can get an action by, Tuesday, May 24th. And by the end of that, by the time people go away for Mem Day weekend, we'll have called people. Does that sound doable, you guys?
All I need is a phone number.
All right, there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Super. Great. Let's finish this 3-minute item.
Really?
Review committee.
Just forget the zero next to it.
Yeah. Policy
Those are-
review
Yeah.
committee. Who's on the policy review committee?
Somebody.
I am.
Elizabeth, she's not here.
I am. I think we just had the conversation about the policy review committee because,
There was a meeting proposed for the 20th and the 15th of June.
right, I only had the 15th. Do we have the 20th also?
That's what I had in my notes.
Oops.
I-
The actual PCA board meeting is on the 20th of June.
Well, May 20th and June 15th is what I had from the notes.
Well, regardless, all I was focusing on was June 15th. That's all I had written in my notes. And that we were going to, if I recall, we were going to discuss what came out of the workshop at the June 20th meeting. That's what I recall.
Maybe I had it wrong. I could have easily done that.
Right. Anyway, June 15th, we just discussed that in the last conversation.
Okay.
Does everybody feel satisfied with that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Personnel Policy Review Committee.
I'm not sure I knew who was on that.
Isn't that the same thing
Yeah,
as
and I-
policy review
Yeah.
committee?
So we have too many.
No, it's personnel policies.
Is that what you were talking about, that operations committee?
No, this is personnel policy.
Which one is addressed in your suggestion for an operations committee?
That would be policy review. Policy review is the handbook.
Right.
Personnel policies is the personnel handbook.
That's Tom, Elizabeth, and Cindy Thomas. Second page of or third page of the minutes. Motion to appoint a Personnel Policies Review Committee, ad hoc.
Okay. It's the same members then, so.
No report.
Right, no report, we have not met.
Okay. No consent calendar items or old business. So we'll move on to the new business of the first item being the proposal for the authorization of the executive committee to prepare draft board meeting agendas.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I don't see on here who's on the policy review committee. Did I miss something there?
Personnel
Discussion of
policy
policy
review.
review committee, it's M
Elizabeth,
slash
Tom, and
S.
Cindy.
Under discussion on policy review committee by handbook, meeting proposed for May 20th.
Which is incorrect. That should have been-
Ad hoc committee, I don't see who's on that committee.
Oh, that's a motion.
In my notes, I have Elizabeth, Tom, Cindy.
That's the personnel policies committee. Not the member policies. One's personnel policies, the other's member policies.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't,
I
in
have
my
that-
notes, I didn't write it as policy review committee, which is the handbook. I had written handbook review committee is what I wrote.
Actually, it's on page 5.
Page 5.
Just ahead of the 7th anniversary celebration.
No, that's the personnel policies. I'm looking for who is on the member handbook,
The ad hoc committee.
the ad hoc member handbook review committee, otherwise known as the policy.
So I think
It's
Cindy
on
has
page
it in her
4,
notes.
right above the budget.
But they,
It says discussion of policy review.
right, and there aren't any
handbook.
committee members listed.
What's MSEERC?
Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Second. So Cindy, you have it in your notes that it was you and
Paul
Tom and
joined us.
Elizabeth?
Personnel policy review I had as Elizabeth, Tom, and Cindy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Handbook review,
Policy review.
yeah.
I didn't have any names either.
Ah,
Ad hoc
Uh,
committee.
I remember saying to Bert, you should be on this committee because you use the equipment. But it may be
Well,
that nobody else
I'm-
was.
Who
I
needs
know
to
that
be
I
on
was
this committee?
charged with posting the notice. I do have that highlighted, post notice me,
Who
June
needs to,
15 meeting.
who needs to be on this committee?
Right.
Let's
Well, I'm
just-
on it.
Let's just do that now. May I suggest that?
If I were to recall the last meeting, the discussion about the handbook review committee coincided with the membership advisory committee discussion, and the two were kind of merged into one. And of course, you could review the tape that was made at that meeting to see exactly how the discussion went down, but there was kind of a scramble to assign people to a great number of committees, so
I think
losing
there
those
was a-
little details is kind of understandable, yeah.
Yeah, I think we were proposing that become something in the future that we would set up through the membership and get that going
Right.
through the membership.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we let that lie for the moment, and so it's like tables, so if the that's one of the script things we need to add into the phone tree maybe? Would they be willing to serve on that, would they wouldn't be participants in reviewing the handbook?
So now I'm really
You
confused.
can't
I'm
open
really
it.
confused. What are we inviting people to come to?
There needs to be a board committee, there needs to be some direction on it.
Well, as I understood it, the June 15th handbook review, I didn't know was a policy review committee. I heard workshop, which you had suggested, Tiff.
Yeah.
I understood June 15th to be a workshop.
Was this the one that we had wanted all the board members to go to?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why we pulled out our calendars, picked
June 15th.
June 15th. It was a Saturday, we were all available.
So let's go ahead with that
Yep,
then.
workshop, yep.
And I agreed to post the notice.
Probably not necessary for all the board members to come to a member handbook review.
Sure it is. I think so.
I think that in terms of the policies, setting, having to set those policies is. really
Well, it would of
good.
course come back to the board for approval.
The
They-
workshop
they-
is
That's
a-
we
one
must-
degree of separation between the members and the
The
board.
most important people, in my view, to be on the member handbook review committee are the staff, because the staff work with the member handbook policies, have to enforce them, they find the holes and the flaws, and, you know, we have a situation and there's nothing clear in the handbook about it, and how do we fix that situation? The staff are the most important people for that process. Members, of course, can give valuable input, and the board should be involved, because the board needs to understand what's going on, and, you know, board can obviously give input too. But in terms of being on the ground every day and knowing what's working and not working in the member handbook, staff know the most.
Is it a staff committee that's reporting to the board? That the staff should review the handbook and make a presentation to the board for the board to review?
I'd like board involvement.
Right, so you want a board, you want, who do you, the question really is, I'm sorry that I'm so naive to this. What is the handbook?
Something the members would.
This is the handbook. It's got all the procedures.
Basically how to use PCA.
Yeah.
It defines to the members what kind of access they're gonna
All
have
the rules
to
and
their station.
regulations, what their
Oh, cool.
responsibilities are for the equipment, for getting stuff on the air. It's, you know, it's a lot of complicated stuff. and
Cool. So you
complicated
want your staff
situations.
to be on this committee to review the handbook and make sure that it's current and accurate and is a usable tool?
Right.
And then who do you want from the board to be on the committee to work with you and the staff?
Point of
Well-
order. Point of order.
Oh, sorry,
You have a point.
Yeah, the meeting's out of control.
you've got a member that's running away, sorry.
So we set up this meeting to go through the handbook, and workshop it. I think that having staff there is great, I think having members there is great, and we go forward with June 15th, and
Right.
we workshop the handbook.
That's supposed to be a Saturday?
It's a Thursday.
Is it a Thursday?
So we're saying 7 to 10 or something?
Whatever day it is.
7 to 9?
June 15th, 7 to 9 is what I have plugged in.
I think that's reasonable.
So let's move forward with our workshop. We
Is it-
have what we have.
Is that the same as the policy review committee, also meeting on June 15th? Is that
Yep.
the same, one
Yeah,
and the
we
same?
have to clarify this. We have to get one, let's call it the
Call it the handbook.
member handbook review.
Okay.
Oh, that's exactly what I have.
So get rid of policy review
And,
committee.
right, and I also recalled that we said said that the personnel policy review needed to come after we did other housekeeping, which is that handbook.
I agree with that.
Okay,
Okay.
so back to new business.
That definitely clarified that.
So we have a proposal, to have the executive committee, formulate the agenda prior to the meetings, the week prior to the meetings. Would we like to entertain a motion to do that? And have discussion on it? We've discussed it a little bit throughout the meeting tonight.
I'm going to abstain from voting because we don't have action listed on this agenda, and I'm really not in favor anyway of the executive committee forming the agenda. That's not standard
So what is standard?
for setting an agenda. The entire board weighs in as far as agenda items.
But we
The
don't have an
executive
entire board
committee
meeting
has-
to set an agenda. We don't do that. That's not standard.
Pardon me?
We don't have an entire board meeting to set an agenda.
Right, the entire board has input to the agenda. They provide those agenda items to the secretary, and the secretary posts that agenda.
Calls for agenda items.
I think the entire board will have input based on our conversation of whenever we had it, an hour ago. So long as the executive committee has a preliminary agenda that we can post it somehow or communicate it to us. And we, as I heard it, we would have a pathway that we, as board members, could add to that agenda, or at least discuss that. So, I'd like to make a motion in which the executive committee does prepare draft board meetings, but make it very specific that all of the board is aware of what that agenda, the proposed agenda is, and has the ability to provide feedback in a timely manner before the agenda becomes finalized.
May I amend that to say that a call a week, we're saying that the executive committee would meet a week ahead of this meeting. We put out a call the week before that meeting for agenda items. Is that reasonable?
So that-
Anytime before that as well, but,
Sure.
or leftovers from a meeting here, but,
That leaves you 2 weeks after a regular meeting to submit items for the agenda preparation meeting to discuss setting an agenda a week ahead of the agenda. Whereas typically setting it by just having directors somehow communicate to the secretary what they would like to put on the agenda, that can happen right up to 72 hours or more than that, giving the secretary time to then post an agenda 72 hours before the meeting.
what I'm speaking to is just a reminder to the board to get their items in a week before the executive committee would meet, to pull it all together and then get out the draft to the board, that's the intention here. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Still has to be posted and all that, but
Oh, I
the board
understand
has
that.
input all the way up until 72, 72 hours before the meeting.
It just keeps moving back a week before a regular meeting is the executive committee meeting, and a week before that, so 2 weeks before a regular meeting, you would have a call for agenda items. Is that it?
That's it?
Which is-
Simply a reminder.
Yeah, so 3 weeks before a regular meeting would be sometimes 1 or 2 weeks after a regular meeting.
But
But it's just a reminder.
It's a
I mean,
reminder. It
the-
doesn't
Okay.
preclude us from
Submitting
being
agenda,
able to
okay,
add.
that's what I was unclear on, yes.
And having the executive committee prepare the agenda allows for more of the board development and working on an agenda, so that it doesn't just fall to the secretary. There's a little bit more thought and communication put into the agenda before it gets created.
That is an insult.
How is that?
I find that insulting.
I have a
I'm
motion
sorry.
on the floor.
There's no second, and I want discussion, please.
We had discussion. So, can we read back the motion?
The motion you propose is to have the board prepare an agenda, to have the executive committee prepare the agenda a week before the regular board meeting, and with the reminder going out 1 week before the executive committee meets for the board to get to submit agenda items. And so that's the motion.
I would like to second the motion.
Discussion. May I?
Absolutely.
I'm just a little disappointed that we're moving forward here after we started this meeting agreeing that Robert's Rules is something that we need to discuss at a retreat, and yet we're already working around Robert's Rules and making decisions without having everybody even take a look at Robert's Rules. I mean, it's obvious that not everyone here is familiar with Robert's Rules of Order, and this does not fall along the lines of Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules clearly defines the roles of every person on the board, including the executive committee. That's not one of the functions of the executive committee, and I just think that's really unfair on one hand for everyone to say that they want to look at using Robert's Rules as the basis for running these meetings, and now we're going to color outside the lines and make a decision without doing the homework first. So I'll just leave it at that.
We've been working outside Robert's rules the entire meeting. And to select
Of course
it
we
right
have.
now on this particular issue is inconsistent.
If you say
Yeah.
so. Discussion is allowed after the motion and the second.
Oh,
by
I
the
understand
way.
that, but the same discussion could have taken place on 20 different items that we covered today.
So can I ask why you're against having the executive
Because it doesn't
committee-
fall along the lines of Robert's Rules of Order. The executive committee has
The
no more power
secretary
than the rest of the committee.
The secretary is part of the executive committee.
I understand
and
that.
So it's supporting the secretary to have a meeting on
I
the
understand that.
agenda.
It doesn't fall within the lines of Robert's Rules. Tip, I'm stating to what I am familiar with Robert's Rules. And the executive committee has no more power than any other board member. And that you would say that only the executive committee can set the agenda is not
It's
balanced.
a public meeting, though. It's not, it's,
Can you give us a crash course, real quick crash course on the right way to set agenda items based on Robert's Rules?
Based on Robert's Rules, the secretary puts out a calling for agenda items. Those agenda items are,
What's the timeline of putting the call out? That's one of the issues we're having.
this board needs to make that decision. This board needs to make that decision, but it has to be within a timeline that allows the secretary to prepare the agenda for posting and to post it within the guidelines of the Brown Act, in our case, the Brown Act.
I don't
There has
believe-
been a history on this board of members submitting items for the agenda that have not been included in an agenda, and I just want to make sure that that doesn't occur.
Just because, in my opinion, because this is the way it's been done in the past, doesn't mean it's going to be the way in the future. And I don't believe the executive committee is unilaterally going to set an agenda. If the language, the spirit of the language, it dictates that we are all informed of agenda items that the executive committee has formulated, we still have feedback, and as board members, we have a right to say, we don't agree with this.
Then why do we need to change it? What's the purpose of changing it?
Changing what?
The form in which the agenda's been set
Because
for
I
the past
think,
10 years.
for me, having a committee that is looking at what they perceive at the time to be important to talk about and still getting feedback from us keeps us organized, rather than haphazardly waiting for each and every one of us, perhaps, to throw it in. It consolidates it for me to take a look at, give my feedback, and say, yes, I agree with this, or I'd like something else added.
Well, it's
I think it organizes. And I think what happened in the past is something that we need to lose in terms of looking towards the future.
Just a point of clarity, the deliberations on setting the agenda, will that include deciding which agenda items are placed on the agenda and which are not?
Say it again for me.
Will deliberations in the executive committee that forms the agenda, does that include making decisions on which agenda items make it to the agenda and which do not?
From what's been submitted and from the bin, it probably helps to prioritize.
Priority, irregardless, just making an item, such as a new item submitted by a director, will the executive committee then call for votes from the committee as to whether or not to include that item on the agenda?
I think, you bring up an interesting point. And by the way, I'm not on the executive committee. You bring up a really good point that if we vote this in, I think it's important that the executive committee communicate with the rest of the board and indeed ask for, if there are any major objections or deletions or whatever you want to call it, call for a vote. Then you get into the issue of what's a passive vote, but that's another issue to maybe.
Well, not so much the passing vote as to the issue of that places the executive committee in a higher position of power than directors.
No, the agenda isn't finalized until all of the boards, I'm understanding this, until the entire board has seen it and said, looks good, then it becomes finalized.
Yeah, and that's one of the first items on the agenda, is to approve the agenda.
Right.
And so just making a meeting to do that is adding work to establishing the agenda. I mean, I don't find it offensive or suspicious, just kind of a busy work. It may lend to better organization, but it also has the potential for abuse.
Anything has a potential for abuse. And again, I go back to making sure that this board is informed of all actions of any subcommittee, whether it be the executive committee or the tech committee or the whatever committee you want to look at. Those all have the potential for abuse, and that's why it behooves us to make sure that we're always informed and have the ability to voice our opinion, nay or yay. But you could use that same, carrying that logic as far as we can, every committee can do that.
Yeah, but not every committee will decide what is on your agenda.
But every committee will still be reporting back to this board as a whole.
But with this proposal, the executive committee would set the agenda.
Now, the committee, as I envision it, the executive committee is going to recommend a proposed agenda.
It's a draft agenda.
And usually the draft agenda is usually publicized, especially amongst the board, and of course input. And I think up to the 72 hours for the Brown Act restraints for the finalization of the formal agenda, then up to that point, actually, I think the chairman has the ability to incorporate anything that they perceive that needs to be on the agenda as one of their functions. Is so if something report rises up 80 hours or 100 hours before the meeting that something has to get taken care of, that's one of the privileges as the chairperson is to modify that agenda as long as it gets into the 72-hour Brown Act that's met. So there's ability to get it in various ways to make a change or additions, deletions. And this is just a vehicle. I think what we're proposing is just a vehicle. just to make it easy for us to get organized. It's not saying, oh, we're gonna set it, that can't be changed. We're not trying to make policies here. We're not gonna say it's not gonna be allowed to be changed. It's just a vehicle to help us get organized. So we're not proposing this is the only way. This is just a proposal for, gee, let's get a time frame here, and let's, a group of people kind of help us work it out. I don't think the intention is to eliminate or prevent anything from coming in on the agenda. So I think up to 72 hours, we can actually add, anybody can really get the chairman and the secretary to come together and put it forward. I think that's the only real requirement of the Brown Act, and even within Robert's rules, that's the privilege of the chairperson to include.
Speaking as the secretary, I found the meeting that we had to be very beneficial. I couldn't have put this agenda together if we hadn't had that discussion, since I'm still learning, and the aspect of the information that coming in from different areas allowed to kind of focus this and get some ownership of it. So it was very helpful to do so. We didn't stop or block anything. It was just more how we're going to do that. So that it was a useful meeting in that respect.
And I think there's a benefit of having it, too, he said, because many times, many monthly meetings, the agenda is set the month before. That was one of the last things you do, is set the agenda for the next meeting one month before. And a lot of folks are stuck with that agenda a whole month ahead. And this is a vehicle to actually get it all the way up and get some flexibility in there ahead of time. So it's like, it's an advantage.
No, I understand the advantage, and that's why I question whether or not this setting of the agenda is going to be a committee vote as to whether or not to accept or deny agenda items submitted by directors.
I don't think there's any intention of voting on agenda items. More of a priority.
It's not an action meeting.
Prioritizing by, you mean by which item
Well,
come
if,
first on the agenda?
no, if there's a lot of items in the bin that maybe we can't cover in 2 hours or so, then we have to figure out how we're gonna cover those items in the future, so they don't just sit in the parking lot or get forgotten, or, so things are covered and not left in the bin, per se. Things that came up in the prior meetings that need to be gone back to and discussed or acted on, if maybe. So can I call for a vote? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? Then the motion is passed. The second item is proposal to schedule and hold a board development retreat session. And I wanted to invite Pat to come up and discuss some options that we have available, some resources through Healthy Community Consortium.
And others in the community. Yep, oh, I'm supposed to say, hi. I'm Pat Landrum. I'm the Executive Director of the Healthy Community Consortium, and I'm a new member of PCA. I had the opportunity to start to get involved with PCA really, I guess, a couple months ago, and have shared our HC Squared's, the Healthy Community Consortium's commitment to supporting PCA as a nonprofit in the community. One of our strategic priorities is actually to strengthen the capacity of all the nonprofits in Petaluma so that the community is more effectively served, so that people can volunteer on boards and on committees and really have a way to give that moves the community forward and improves the quality of life in the community. So I basically have offered our technical assistance to PCA to support your board development, since you're brand new, really, as a board. But that you are an organization that have been in existence for a long time. So that's one offer. There are a lot of resources that are available in the community. Volunteer Center, Sonoma County, has a structured board development program that they offer, and they will actually come and work specifically with your board on a board development plan. They also offer monthly programs that are specifically about board development. So you could choose as a board to have your board hire a volunteer center of Sonoma County to come down and work with your board. Or you could have board members go to the different programs that are offered and then bring that into your board. I also know that a number of the executive directors in Petaluma have talked informally about building, I guess I'd say a board capacity building consortium to basically help boards and executive directors set goals for where you want to go as an organization, to set development goals, and to use tools that are available on a volunteer basis from the mentoring in the existing resources in the community. So that for nonprofits that have limited budget to pay for resources to develop your staff and your board, to build a network of volunteer support for you. So I just wanted to make that available, let you know that that's there, and really give you an opportunity to pull from the resources that are available, given that you've got a limited budget for that, and that you've got a lot that you are up to. I think that's all. Any questions?
How much do you charge for your services?
Well, you know, HC squared.
For, say, an all-day retreat?
Retreat. I think that the thing that we would explore with you is identifying if there's a way that we could partner with PCA, for PCA to provide some services to HC squared projects in exchange for our work with the board. So for example, we'd like to have PCA film shoot some activities that we are sponsoring.
We already have.
Yeah, so we actually asked PCA to shoot a half-day workshop by Steven Snyder, who's a world-famous business development coach. We shot the 3-hour workshop. We'd like to partner with PCA to make DVDs and to sell those DVDs where the money would actually come to you guys. And so we actually want to promote what PCA is up to. And we'd like to partner with you to promote what PCA has to offer to other nonprofits and to the community at large in exchange for us providing you technical assistance. And I think we just need to look and see, well, you know, how many hours do you think it's going to take, and what do you really need, and, you know, how are we going to make it happen, and, you know, look at our capacity to do that, and also look and see, are there other executive directors and other resources in the community that we could help, you know, garner to address what you said as your development needs. So we actually are not proposing a cash exchange.
How formal, and I guess I throw this out to the board and you had as well, do we need to make this in terms of the partnership and the exchange? I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but is it something that needs to be written in the form of a contract or a memorandum of understanding or something like that?
It's probably a good idea to draft a memorandum of understanding for a scope of work for basically in-kind technical assistance in exchange for services, just so that we don't get ourselves into a funny situation.
And that would be passed by the board?
Yeah, that the board would say, well, we'd like to do this with you, and this is how much time we think it's going to take to do it, and here's what we need. And then we would look together at, you know, who are the best resources in the community. For example, I see, you know, I think a lot about John Reckerts, who's the executive director of COTS, who has some very specific skills that he can bring to working with the board and with the staff. You know, is there a module we could ask him to offer? And basically HC squared would broker that, and he would volunteer his time. We then can look and see who are some of the other boards in the community that have been working together, and what are some tools that they've used. Is there a board chair or a board committee that could deliver a module of work, and we would actually broker that and design a program with you. a day-long workshop is usually a good way to start, or a 5-hour workshop is a really good way for a new board to start and get some of the basics down. And then you can look and see over the course of the year, what are the modules we want to put in place that are part of our board meetings and reading and materials that would have us say, over the next year, as a board, we want to grow our capacity, the depth of our board, the strength of our ability to work together, that'll ultimately serve the mission of the organization. And we could scope that out over a period of about a month to really design what it would look like, and then have some points of review so that we are clear what we're doing, and so that you aren't getting ambiguous deliverable from a community resource in exchange for an ambiguous response. We want to get it clear enough that you know what you're getting and what you're giving for that, so it doesn't become funky. Is that clear? It's a little informal the way I said it.
I like it.
So what I'm unsure of is how to, we want to schedule a retreat today.
Well, I think first you want to decide if you want to do a retreat, because I think that's on your agenda for discussion.
Right. Yeah.
So first you want to decide that, then you may want to discuss it, and if you don't want me in the room when you have that discussion, you can ask me to leave.
Okay. Great. So what we would need to do then is also decide how that development retreat session would look in forming a motion, I think, for a retreat.
Is it, I think there's reasonable consensus that we want to have, that we need to and want to have a retreat. But
That's
it
what I
occurs to
heard.
me now that I don't know how we could schedule it just yet without everybody opening their calendars and spending 15 minutes negotiating over this day or that day. When what we've just heard is that we may want to look at a day. I think we need to shape this one and bring this back as at the next meeting after we've had some time. But I'm feeling like this is going to probably need to happen sometime in the summer after we have a time to do that. But if we can entertain a motion to hold the retreat
Right.
tonight, the next step would be then when and shape and form of that. Is that so?
Second that.
So the motion is that that this board will have a board development retreat at a date to be determined, and with a time frame and a content to be determined. And we'll bring that back at the next meeting to update and schedule that. Yes.
Did you second that?
Yes.
Okay. Discussion would be in terms of what that looks like for the next meeting, talking about having Healthy Community Consortium be a part of that, or...
It's easily amended. Yes.
Actually,
I would accept that.
I'll have it as a second motion, an additional motion. We need a retreat. And then a possible second motion would be to investigate the possibility of partnering up, and how we wish to do that, whether Ginny's going to work, develop something to report back to us, so that we can discuss it and so forth and so on. So I see it as being two separate motions.
Okay. So the basic motion is to hold the retreat and schedule the time and makeup of it later.
And we have a second for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so all in favor of holding a retreat and scheduling it at a date to be determined, say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous. So the second motion would be
To investigate a linkage, a partnership
With the Healthy Community Consortium.
with the Healthy, and, geez, I don't know if I want, correct me me if I'm wrong, but I'm very open to this, having you two communicate and giving a report back to the board about the logistics involved
At the next meeting?
at the next meeting.
Right, and I think to cover our behinds, I think we need to have included in that report what the fair exchange value is for services.
Good point.
Absolutely.
Actually, just to take it even further, it would be nice to see something that we can read prior to the meeting. That way, we're not trying to analyze and absorb and vote on all at the same time.
Without, at the risk of sounding a little odd, you may actually, you may actually also want Janine to explore other alternatives. And see if there's another option, because you don't want to just lock the next step being that Janine and I talk about how HC Squared is going to do it with you. You may want to have her also share other options with you, so you can look at some options.
Okay, I
And
appreciate that.
amend your motion to include that, because you don't want to get yourself going down a track in such an important area without looking at options.
Accept that as an amendment?
Could you read it back?
I'm still writing it.
Okay.
Your motion was that the board form a linkage with Healthy Communities Consortium to investigate a retreat, the content of a retreat and size and form of it, and that Pat Landrum and Janine will report back to the board at the next meeting, including into that some idea of what the fair exchange for services between PCA and HCC. And the last part was that Janine should also investigate other possibilities of retreats.
Our partnership.
Okay.
Board development.
Right, and I think the first part was not forming a linkage, but investigating a
Right.
linkage,
Thank you.
which would include
Basically a proposal.
a proposal, yes. We would like to investigate a proposal.
And can you make that board development programs, because different groups may have different things to propose. May not all be retreat.
Well, hopefully you can check other public access board type retreats.
Okay.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I thought there was, no, there was, I'll second that, let's put it that way, yes.
Any further discussion? Then we'll go ahead and move to vote on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It was unanimous.
It's consensus.
The third item on the agenda is, under new business, is discussion and a proposal to form an ad hoc committee to prepare a draft access activities plan and budget. And there are several items under that. We are required to, PCA is required to prepare, approve, and submit an activities plan and budget to the city of Petaluma. That was extended until June 30th. I requested the city manager for an extension since the budget that was being worked on wouldn't have had an opportunity to make it on the agenda to be approved and all of that, and wouldn't have been in line with an activities plan, kind of cart before the horse. And the task hasn't been completed yet, and as well to adjust the plan and then prepare a realistic budget for that plan so that we have funding for the projects that we would like to have this year in the next fiscal year. So in order to do that, we would need to have a draft plan, activities plan and budget within 3 weeks. And be able to review the plan and the budget prior to the regular board meeting on June 20th.
And just one piece of information to add to that, that there already exists this plan for the prior year in the budget. We already have something that in hand, so it's not something we have to invent that's new. It's
We have a template already.
We have a template.
Yeah.
The problem is, it was discussed at our executive committee, that I tried to note that here, was that the plan and the budget don't necessarily line up from last year, so that's part of the,
Right.
as you have elaborated in your discussions. And does this timeline meet the financial committee's?
It has to.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Fair enough.
So the finance committee is basically doing the budget, and what the proposal is to take what is formulated out of that committee and bring it into this ad hoc committee and link it to activity.
My understanding
Actually-
is not quite,
Yeah.
is a little different from that. And my understanding is that the first thing you're supposed to do is come up with a plan and then develop a budget around the plan. And so what we have is last year's budget, which we sort of looked at, and we're sort of like looking at, analyzing it, and it says, okay, so we think it's not way out of the ballpark, but it's manageable and usable, what we have and where we can go with it, some of the ideas there. But the plan comes first, then you budget for the plan that you want to attempt, and then figure out how you're going to do it. So rather than budget first, then figure out what you can do, it's plan first. So, and the other thing we were talking about is this process here, instead of putting this on the shoulders of the finance committee, we're just looking, this is now creating a new committee which may include the finance committee, but if you make an ad hoc committee, it would be larger than the finance committee to make this, because this is a activities plan that needs to include as much input from everybody, not just 3 people on the finance committee. I mean, we can help you with the budget, but the plan needs to be reviewed with a larger audience. So that's why we need an ad hoc committee to do that, not just the finance.
So would the ad hoc committee be board members as well as community members? Or who would make up the ad hoc?
Yeah.
I'm-
I think that's what's being proposed here now. I think that's what the executive committee was intending.
It's on the table as to who that committee would
Oh, I see,
include.
okay.
It's going to be a public committee, so there
Okay.
would be member input. Janine, did you have a comment?
Well, I just want to say that the main issue in the activities plan and the budget is staffing. This is where the bulk of the attention is gonna have to go. How are, the staff is in complete flux right now. We have to restructure the staff. We have to be creative about it. We have to be extremely resourceful about it. We have to make precision fits between staff and duties that need to be done. So that's what I see as the biggest challenge in creating an activities plan and then figuring out how to pay for it. What are the staffing needs that we have? What do we want to accomplish with this staff? What are realistic goals for what we can accomplish with this much staff that we have? And then how do we pay for that staff in an equitable way that creates incentives and motivations and stability, keeps people around?
I'm a little confused. We seem to be having a lot of layers here. Okay, the way that I understand it, and by reading all of these many executive director descriptions that have existed here over the years, including the current ED job description, says that the executive director is responsible for putting together the budget and presenting it, and working with the treasurer and presenting that to the board. I understand everything's been topsy-turvy and that we need to give a boost to this effort. I don't understand why it's now executive director, treasurer, finance committee, and we're gonna add another layer. I'm having some heartburn over that.
Well, this is an ad hoc committee, and because things are topsy-turvy, and I understand what you're saying, and I agree with the overall premise, but with things being in transition, as I'm seeing this, it's a short-lived committee to help things move forward. rather than just putting it all on one person's shoulders, helping. And then when we're done helping, then it really is, then you can figure out it, the ins and outs.
And that's what I thought the finance committee was doing, because the finance committee ordinarily doesn't really get too involved in that process, but they are very involved at this point. An ad hoc committee, to me, sounds like a bailout committee to be used whenever things aren't being done when they're supposed to be done. That's what it sounds like to me.
To me, it sounds like, and when an ad hoc committee is formed, it's recognizing an issue or a set of issues.
Right, ad hoc
And
as
trying
needed.
to resolve those issues.
Right.
So
Ad
I'm
hoc
not sure I
is
would
as
put it
needed.
in terms of a bailout. I would say it's called progress in moving forward.
Well, it shouldn't be needed, and I understand this one-time situation. And whatever we need to do to get it fixed, okay, but I get a little uncomfortable with ad hoc committee because now we got another committee and we're gonna have to vote to get rid of that committee. So why don't we just get the finance committee and the treasurer and the ED to get this thing together and get it done with?
Okay, the issue I have with that, when looking at the finance committee doing this, is that the plan is not just, we're not there's two things happening here. There is the maintenance thing of just making sure that the TV is running and the 3 channels are running, and there's the maintenance budget. And yes, the finance committee can deal with the maintenance budget, we can go through that. But the plan is not a maintenance plan. The plan is a vision, and this vision is bigger than the budget. And so we have to decide on, is the vision and what the plan is. And the vision and plan is not a single person with a vision and plan. It's the membership, it's the board, it's the executive director putting it together for an entire vision. Where do we want to go from here? So the plan needs to be established by everyone to come together with this community vision. Because I think that's one of the troubles we have had in the past, is that the vision and the budget and everything was mismatched. And so we want to match it all up together so everyone agrees and comes to consensus on where are we going. And the only way to do that is through a committee process of bringing together the different components. Because other than that, we're just going to not agree when we need to get it done by the 30th. We're going to come and say, we don't agree. So we need to come out with, we need to have some sort of community consensus about the plan.
You're the finance guru, what do you recommend?
Well, the end result is going to be the same thing. I mean, your suggestion is that we beef up the finance committee, add 2, 3, 4 people, whatever, to include the plan. To
Adding
include
who?
the plan.
That's not.
Well, no,
that's been
okay,
defined.
we put it
Who
out there,
you adding?
if anybody wants to.
Who's
Or,
anybody? Members?
Yeah, and.
And that's it? No, you're
Member
not
of the-
hiring consultants or?
We don't, why should we?
Okay.
No.
No, that's why I
Oh, yeah,
wanted
no,
clarification.
there's no need for consultants. I think we have enough talent here, so to do that. But, and then the other side would be to do an ad hoc, which would be essentially the same thing. We absorbed finance committee into the ad hoc, with possibly some new people.
And then we would dissolve that committee?
The ad hoc,
Mhm.
at the end of the fiscal, yes, yeah.
Yeah, for the
yeah,
third,
at the
it was
end
for the
of fiscal
report,
year.
it was for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
proposal to the board, that was
Yeah,
it. That's
yeah.
all what happened.
Yeah,
The basic issue is to get it done.
Right,
And
I
and
understand.
understanding that this probably rightfully should have been started in, January or February or something like that.
yeah,
And we're not there, so.
and I could live with it because we're in hot water, I could live with that,
Mhm.
knowing that you're going to dissolve that committee
Mhm.
when this is all over with, then I
Right.
can,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
Okay, then, we will move to vote. Or we need,
We need a motion.
we need a motion.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought we had one, I thought we were in discussion. So I, like to entertain a motion to, create an ad hoc committee to develop the activities plan and budget, by, when's our due date?
June 20th,
As if we presented to the board, June 20th.
presented to the board
But
June
we need
20th,
time to
prior to that.
look at it as well, so, June 13th.
And the only thing that's missing is who's charged with forming this committee.
we're forming it right now. Or
Motion to form the committee and then who's on the committee would be the next thing, unless we want to wrap that into this motion.
I propose the finance committee, plus do we have any other takers who would like to get involved?
I will.
Excellent.
And its name.
Jamie Walking Bear.
I'd like to participate in the process
Super.
as, from the tech committee.
I think Elizabeth Eyre expressed some interest in
Okay.
helping with this.
Can we add people to the
The
committee
ad
right
hoc
here?
committee for
We can
planning
ask
and
if you will.
With their
planning and budget.
approval through
Okay.
the email, whatever.
Yeah.
And Bert?
Sure, yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, I think a message needs to go out if we're looking at just board members, we need to somehow communicate to the people who aren't here tonight, this committee's being formed, are you interested, and give them a little bit of background on it. Say, are you interested? But we need your response by, like,
But how do we do
yesterday.
that? Postcard, email?
Yeah, I caution against too big.
Well, we're talking about board
Board
members.
members.
Oh, board members,
We're talking
okay,
about
okay,
people.
excuse me, okay.
Oh.
Okay,
People first.
contact the rest of the board,
Yeah, just let them know, and that
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
we can conjecture if Bert wants
Yeah,
to or
I
not,
mean-
I'll let on, let's find out. from Bert.
I would like to see a meeting next week for this, I mean, well,
Did
that
you-
might be too soon.
Did you have a finance committee set for next week?
Uh,
Second?
I
Yeah.
think we sort of agreed that 6 o'clock
I thought I saw
Monday,
something.
Yeah.
we're gonna try and meet here.
Can we,
Make that an ad
can
hoc
we hop
committee.
on to your,
Yes.
Yeah,
By
well,
all
the purpose of the next meeting was to get things going.
Yeah.
okay, so we
Yeah.
could.
So we're trying to review the prior plan and budget and try to get things more matched up. And if we have to meet every week, that's what we end up doing
That may happen.
until it's done.
And how would we communicate to the people who aren't here tonight?
Actually, Bert's not gonna be back in time for any of
Right,
this.
anyway,
Okay,
so in terms of.
let me try to sort of kind of read that back, if you will. Tiffany has made a motion to create an ad hoc committee to prepare the activity plan and budget. And with your accordance, I would add that this committee will expire at the end of the fiscal year. Okay? And the makeup of that committee shall be the members of the finance committee, Jamie Walking Bear, Tiffany and Renee, and the finance committee includes the executive director?
Mhm.
Okay. And then the others can, yeah, others can be added with the approval of the committee. And the date of the first meeting of the committee is?